And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. And I've been on the bop vacationing in Guadalajara and points. Oh, God, dog. Oh, dog farts. Oh my God. Ooh. Guys, stop it. Stop. Anyway, say I've been hanging in this nice warm place, and they got the nice internet, and they got the nice TV, and they got the nice everything. Shower. I haven't taken a shower in a year. I've taken about 5 in the last hour. um, and it's icky and cold, and you know, I can survive the winter out in the deep green, but it's not comfortable. Um, that it's really great spring, summer, and fall, right? But that like 10 weeks or so from about Christmas until April 1st, however many weeks that um, is I would go down to my nice little house in the Florida Keys, my other Cilantro in Stewart, Florida, which is really I don't know what it is. I haven't been back to Florida. Oh, when did I get rid of everything? About 2012. And 2014, when I died, I really got rid of everything, right? And so I've changed my life. I went from, doing pretty good, not ever worrying about how do I pay my bills, to living, I live the life of a desperate lawyer who makes a 9-figure salary, which I didn't do. I just worked for those guys. And part of my shtick was I always saved their butt. They got comfortable with that, and I was entertaining. So, they kept me around. So even though I would only work for them 2 or 3 weeks, they keep me for a month, right? They go work for some desperate lawyer in Las Vegas for a month. You work a week, and then they keep you up in a fancy hotel or one of their houses or whatever. And, that's how I lived. And they paid all the bills, right? And anyway, and that was part of the job. They took up their taxes. I was a consulting fee, and they pay me X, and it kept me in my secured tax bracket. And, I definitely didn't break any laws, and I wasn't as, was that ethically right? Well, this is America. What is ethically right? But I didn't break any laws. I was working for the best lawyers on the planet and the best accountants. So no. Now you want to see some breaking the law. You go look at every politician that exists. I mean, they write the law so they can. It used to be against the law. You're a senator, and you hear all these hearings, and so which company is going to get the contract for that new fighter. Before it gets announced, and their stock is like at $10 a stock. You buy, a couple $100,000 worth of it, and then it gets announced that they get the big contract, and so that stock went from $10 to $100. The senators in the United States actually laws. It's totally against the law. It's called inside trading. They pass laws so it's okay for them to do it. So, just go and watch George Carlin. Any of his shtick that he did the last 40 years of his life. And he was, I am schooled by the school of George Carlin, right? At least politically. So here it is. I don't know. I think the 1st of March, right? March comes in like a lamb, goes out like a lion. Well, it's going to do that. Last night I was watching, I watched television until 12, right? I watched Perry Mason. I really like Perry Mason and a lot of Star Trek. And I watched one movie And I suggest you guys go watch that movie. It's called The Day After Tomorrow. So everyone's whining and crying and going on about the gnashing of teeth of whatchamacallit. Let's see. These cute little doggies. There's Miss M, and there's Hot Dog, right? And there's the outside world. That's, I'm about 20 miles from the deep green, but this is the same mountain range. And this is what it looks. It's either really sunny or it looks like that, right? So anyone got anything to say? Live chat, that's what we're going for. So there are things going on around our solar system. There are things going on many dimensions. Anything you think you know is wrong. Anything that, the, what do you want to call it? Oh, look at that guy. Look at Miss M. She's keeping an eye. She's protecting me. Well, these guys are really, they're little, there's a little Hot Dog. And he got run over by a car when he was a little puppy. So all his paws are like squished. And he still does he whine? No, he gets around. He got up there. He's got no way to get up there, but he got his butt up there. Right? They like sitting next to me. They don't like everybody, but they've always liked me, right? And normally, this guy didn't smell so bad. I'd let him. This is as close as he gets to me because I still go over there, sit next to him, and scratch his belly. He likes that. But man, he starts farting. And it's like, he's worse. No, Donald Trump is worse than this dog. Donald Trump's incontinent. He farts all the time. It's a great picture. He's at NATO or an EU meeting or some meeting, and all the presidents of Europe are standing around him, and he farts, and you can see them get away from him. So I don't take I've been taking a shower in at least 4 or 5 months. I love showers. I just don't have one. I don't have hot water. Now I do summertime, when it's not really cold, I have a big 200-foot long, he's getting over towards me. Yes. Oh, he's a good boy. Yes, Hot Dog, you're a good boy. Yes, you are a good boy. Anyway, I have a nice 200-foot long, come on. A nice 200-foot long hose that gets the water from my spring, and that's hotter than hot. It's black hose, 200 feet, and I have a misty kind of, sprinkler. Oh, look at that little Hot Dog. Look at that Hot Dog. Hot Dog. Come on. Yes. Woof, 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 woof. There's his little paw. It's about kind of smudged, right? Yes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yes. Most people, anybody who would do this, except his mommy, and some both his law, but he still gets around. Yeah, don't you? You're the boy. You're the man. Yes, you are. Now, she's the queen, this one up here. And she'll go it through your throat, right? Yes, you're a good boy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you smell bad, but you can't help that. Yes, you can't help that. Yes. Yes. Ooh, you like that, don't you? You like your little ears. Yes, Hot Dog. You're my Hot Dog. Hot Dog. Woo. Have Gun with Travel, Gunsmoke, Paladin. What are the movies said? Perry Mason. I've found watching all the TV I've watched. I've been here 2 evenings. Basically, the television I watch. So, and there's no one here. They've all gone. I'm basically watching the puppies, right? Oh, you're a puppy. Yes, you're my little Hot Dog. Yes, you are. Woof, woof, woof. And they got like 8 million cats. It's like, and they sleep in the laundry room where the dryer is, right? They got the magic door to go in and out, but they don't get to go in the house. These guys would eat them alive, or the cats would eat them alive, so they just get to stay in the laundry room. But if I walked in there now, it's like scattered like cockroaches. It's quite interesting. Yes. Oh my little, yes, my little hot dog. Yes, you are. You're so cutie. Yes, you are. You're so cute. So anyway, she likes that. She uses my hand as a pillow. Yes, don't you? Yes, you are. Yes. So these folks, they pick up every kind of animal that's hurt, right? That's where they got the cats from. And they're not cat people either. They're dog folk, but they just take care of. Anyway, so when I'm watching on the media is, you guys forget it. You got to watch, whatever, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, that's all crap. PBS, C-SPAN, not so bad. They try and do their best, and they don't. What C-SPAN does well is they don't really interfere. It's like they put a camera in the house and they let it go and walk away, and you watch all these guys be total fools. You can see how crooked they are, that they're, like our Congress, the present, Congress that's now run by Republicans. The Republican Congress itself got rid of their own speaker. It's like, what? First time in history. So that guy had been there forever, and they should have kept him because he was at least somewhat good at his job. The guy now, not so much, because he's so ideologically tweaked, right? And he's still not good enough for the Freedom Coalition, right? So they haven't passed a single frigging bill. They have continue with this and that and this. I mean, they said, we're not giving, Ukraine or Israel any money unless you do something about the border. And so, the Democrats said, so what do you, so they put together a bill that actually wasn't that bad. It was everything Republicans asked for. And then Donnie said, no, sink that one, right? And so, was that for the good of the country? No, it was good of Donnie Trump, so anyway, good luck with this, good luck with what's going on. See, kids, you don't realize that you don't live in a democracy, it really hasn't, from the beginning, Constitution was just for the rich white guys, not for anybody else, right? I mean, I'm going on, this show, I've almost had it on 7 years. Can you believe that? I've been on almost 7 years, have almost 2,500 shows. I mean, if you go and go to them and go to the place where you can watch each show and count them, it's more than 2,000. YouTube, for some reason, doesn't let me say that it says that I have like 1,500. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, right? None of this matters. What matters is love's co-creation. What's your personal relationship with love's co-creation? God. That's what's God, right? So I go around and talk like this to everybody I see, in the supermarket, in the gas station, Walmart's, wherever I'm at. And, I don't like, go around with a sign, repent. But I'll be going around and I'll be standing on the line or just roll around. And I will see people who emotionally need a little pep talk. And I will roll into them and say, hey, let me look at your palm, right? And I go from there. And I don't really talk to people unless they need it. And also, they have to be able to listen to what I have to say. And if they can just, see, everything we see and hear and smell and taste, it goes into our olfactory memory and stays there. Now, thing about memory, you don't forget anything. It's just retrieving the specific information at a specific time that can be difficult, right? And what's her name? there was a woman who had a speed reading, Evelyn Wood speed reading. See, I forgot her name, but I just went to this place in my brain and Evelyn Wood speed reading, right? She also had Evelyn Wood speed memory. And there's this thing called the Mind Palace, right? Big, big, big palace with a zillion rooms, and each room has dresser drawers, right? Hundreds of them in each room. And so you put that memory specifically in that room, in that part of the castle, in that little dresser drawer, and there's a memory. And so all you have to do is access that specific place, and there's a memory, right? And that was the Evelyn Wood memory course. So I learned that, and I learned Evelyn Wood speed reading course. Now, I got my jaw broken by a nun when I was in first grade. I was 7 years old, 8 years old, something like that. She picked me up by the throat and crushed my larynx, broke my jaw right here, smooshed my orbit of this eye, and broke the little stirrup in my ear. So I was deaf, blind, couldn't speak, right? And I could barely breathe, right? So I had very contained, lungs problem, because I couldn't get enough air into them, and they get gooky. And but I got sent off to the Marinols, and it was like the $6 Million Man. They rebuilt me, right? It was great. I had a audiologist, for my ear. I had a optic nerve guy, and I had a speech therapist, and a breath therapist, and a theatrical person. That's where I kind of learned how to act. When I was 7. I mean, I was already acting, and they put me together. But when I came out of that, I still couldn't speak, right? It's kind of what I spoke. And then when I had all these exercises they taught me, and I practice those, and I still do to today, those therapeutic practices. And so when I started to speak, I had a stutter, right? Stutter, right? And I still have those, but I was trained to use them as a mechanism. And that, again, you can hear in my speech that it kind of props in. But they taught me that all of the problems that I had, they weren't handicaps. They were, gifts to be used as to train myself to do better, right? So to speak, I have to, I was trained to think about what I want to say, put it all together, just like a script, and wind it up. And then when I speak, I just play the tape, and it comes out. That's why I'm very specific about what I say. I'm very clear about what I say, that you understand and you feel what I say. That's why you like my stories, right? So, and to be able to be real time about a conversation, I have to really listen. And because it broke this ear hears like normally, right? I can hear you talk. So when I talk to somebody, I have to almost face this ear towards them. But this ear, I can hear them breathe. I can hear their heart. I can hear many other things. I can hear people far, far, far away. And I can hear people whispering, right? This normal. This has very strange characteristics. And they kind of tuned my ear up to be sharp at all of those things, and then taught me how to use that sharpness, right? So that's kind of me. And so my observation, so, when I chose the piece of property at the Deep Green I bought in 2003, and I knew I'd be in this position physically, by 2000. I was thinking 2016. I didn't think I'd die before then, but I died in 2014. Well, 2012, I was like the Walking Dead, right? But I'm still doing everything. I gained another 40 pounds between 2012 and 2014. Because, man, I was living on the hog, right? I had a nice car that actually got me I never had to worry about it until it just blew up because, the last 10 years that I had that car, it still ran great until it didn't. Right? That's a key. It runs great until it doesn't. It's like when I had a Volvo, it would always get me wherever I had to go, no matter what the weather was, no matter what the situation was. The car would always start, but it always had problems. Like it leaked, right? The seat, it was a little pin, and if the pin skipped, you'd be flat on your back driving the car, right? Little things like that. But it always got me to where I wanted. So my mother, I had two Volvos. It was both my mom's. And one, she got a diesel during the oil thing, and then she never drove it. And so it sat there, and then she said, why don't you take that diesel? And the reason why it sat there is because for some reason she forgot to put oil in it for years, and then the crankshaft cracked. But it still ran. Even though you could, if you opened up, it was like you remember the Invisible Man? They also had the invisible engine, and you would basically, you'd start an engine up, open up the hood, and look down, and you could look through the engine. You could see the cylinders, and you look down there, and it's supposed to run by compression. And I never understood how that motor could run when the whole engine was open to the air. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about cars. I know everything, not everything. I know a lot about a lot. Cars is not one of them. Anyway, so it was like I had a girlfriend at Cornell who was she was literally a rocket scientist, right? And so she and I lived together. She had this is the main reason why I had this, I was living on this crazy farm. We're a crazy farm guy. And I met her, and she had a cute little apartment in right on what is known as Businessman's Lunch. Right downtown Ithaca, New York, is a big river that runs right through Cornell and then right through the top part of where Cornell is, of Ithaca, and right down through the city, right? So, the main street where all the banks and offices are, one block to where this big gorge is, and these houses are stuck all over, overlooking this gorge. So she had a really great, cute little house, yellow house, that looked, the deck looked right over the gorge, and we had steps going from that we could go swimming down there, right? And it was really nice. And the sound of the resting was very nice. And she was very nice too. She was very sexy. But she was a rocket scientist and a Virgo. So she was always right? No matter what, and she thought she knew everything. Me, I know nothing, right? So she liked the fact that I understood that she knew everything, and she was a Virgo. So I let her be right about everything. But sometimes she would be so catastrophically off the hook, and I still wouldn't say anything about it, right? Because I didn't care, right? We were having great sex. She had a great house. Her daddy was rich. So, I didn't have to worry about money. They paid me pretty good just to be a consultant. And I could do whatever the heck I wanted. I had more access than anybody else because I was almost invisible. My boss was the top dude, and my best friend who got me there, she was the top dudette. And so, there was no, and a lot of the other professors were upset because, I was treated like, John the Baptist. That's probably the best way to look at it. And gosh, boy, this guy's weird, but man, because I would be sent off not only in one department, but virtually, because you have to realize Cornell's a big research place, right? You go to any national laboratory and there's a Cornell Avenue street or anything. There's no MIT Avenue, no Harvard Avenue. but there's Cornell in virtually every national laboratory. So anyway, I was in that situation. It was great, and I worked for this electrician. So the farm I was on, the lady who got me into Cornell, right? Who she was the head dudette. I knew her forever, right? And so when my second wife died, and I was working at creating this housing coalition, and the no nukes thing, and the Stop Shoreham thing, and a whole bunch of other things I was working on. I was, and it didn't really put any pressure on me, but it put me in many places at the same time, and in a lot of places, they were dangerous places to be. Like working in a housing project where everyone's selling crack, and you're trying to, protect grandma and the babies, right? And so I got shot twice, and the second time is when Mary and my partner, who knew Mary, called her up and said, "We got to get Al out of New York." Because basically because my second wife died, I was, I'm going to kill myself, but I kept putting myself in really scary, dangerous situations, and 90% of the time it worked out like I was Moses parting the Red Sea. But twice I got shot. Another time, it's a good one. So I had this electric business, right? And pretty much, I was an my electrical mentor started the IBEW in the 20s, right? I mean, actually started in the 1890s, but it became a real thing and powerful thing in the 20s. Anyway, long story short, I was 17 and I got into the apprentice, plopped into the apprentice program of the IBEW while they're building the World Trade Center because they needed more and more electricians. And to work on that site, you had to be a union guy. I was working for Grandpa Stahl, and they had two, Grandpa's business. It was Grandpa's business, but the main business, Stahl Electric, was now run by his son, Mike, right? And so they did all the skyscrapers, they did all the union stuff, and I would go and work with them every now and then when they wanted me to learn something, right? I remember one time we did for Con Edison a big transformer, what do they call them? Not casket. There's a term for it. It's like casket. It's like a big concrete box in the ground. So the thing blows up, it's okay. So anyway, I worked on that. And because I worked in a company, you could take manpower, because back in the day, there were a lot of electrical shops that were, union and non-union. And so you could have X amount of your people who weren't union in the union job. So I would, when I was younger, 13, 14, I would work. I remember I did this one job down at Wall Street, and they stuck me on it. I spent the whole frigging summer changing out meters. They were going to put one gigantic 10-point meter on this building, and every little office in that it's 22-story building. Each floor had about 7 to 10 offices on it. So, let's just say 20 times 10. That was 200 offices. There were more than that, but there were more than that meters. So there were these bunkers where I just had walls and walls and walls of meters, and we're turning it to one 10-point meter, right? I spent the whole summer rewiring it. I had to do it live because all these guys had offices and they had computers and stuff, and you couldn't just shut them down. So I had to do everything live. So, man, I got shocked a lot. So that was a union job, but I was the only guy there. They just stuck me on there. Anyway, so when I, 17, I was old enough to be apprentice. I went there. They were going to put me on the World Trade Center. Both Mikes wanted me to experience that job. I was, it'd be good for your resume. You worked on the World Trade Center. And so, I'm an apprentice. So we have to go to apprentice school where you learn all of the basic nomenclature and physics and science of electricity, blah, 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 right? And so we go on Saturdays, right, for 4 hours, right? So Now, getting to be apprentice, you get paid doing that. This is 1969. Apprentices got $12 an hour, right? And if you were a journeyman, you would get $30 an hour in 1969. If you were a master, you get about $60, right? If you were a steward, you not only made a lot of money, you had a lot of power. So anyway, I show up to that, class, and first thing we sign in, they give us a few books, and we go up to this classroom in the Union Hall, and we're sitting there. No one shows up, right? Sitting there. Some guy goes, "Why don't we just leave?" I said, "Come on, buddy. We should, please. You want this job? So we said, let's read the book. Anybody want to read the book?" And so a couple of guys were looking at it and go, "What is it?" And I said, "So listen, so let's take the first page." And half the guys couldn't read it. I read it out loud. And reading out loud is the one thing that I would have a little stuttering at. And so I would, I could read it out loud, and I would stutter a little bit. But so I said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to stand up here, and I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to explain it to you. Because if I explain it to you, then I won't stutter. And as I explain it to you, I'll have read that chapter or that page, and I will say, so look at that paragraph, right?" And I could read them that paragraph. And anyway, so I was doing that. And we did that for about 2 hours. And I noticed this guy come at the door and stand there and watch me and watch me and watch me. I kind of knew who that guy was. He was a steward. And so anyway, he, gets time for us to leave, and he comes in and goes, "Okay, boys, here, sign this piece of paper to show that you've been here today. And as you leave, and we'll see you next Saturday." And he goes, "Al, you stay here." And so, I'm 17 years old. And so he, everyone leaves, and he goes, "So you taught this class?" I said, "Yeah, you watched me." He goes, "You did a really good job." And I said, "What happened to the guy who's supposed to be here?" And he goes, "Oh, for some reason, he can't make it. He won't be able to teach this class." And I said, "Do you got anybody else?" And he goes, "Not really." I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" He goes, "How would you like to teach the class? You did a really great job. You know this stuff. You've been, Grandpa Still's boy since you were 9. You know this stuff." And I said, "But don't you have to be a journeyman to teach this class?" He goes, "Yep, you're now a journeyman." So I was the youngest journeyman in the IBEW. Like, I was there 2 weeks and I became a journeyman. And not a single anyone complained. No one. Because none of those journeymen wanted to teach that course. Nobody, and I'm not a dickhead, so I became I didn't look, I'm the youngest journeyman. I didn't do that, right? I was just quiet. I just did my thing. People would have a problem with something, I would go help them do it, right? So by the time, I was there, let's see, I was probably, I got out of school in May, at least October. So I guess it was around August. I went from journeyman to be a master because they wanted me to work at the World Trade Center. And they had this, so you have to realize the World Trade Center wasn't built like any other building. It was built in a factory, because big chunks of it were. And they would just stick it together like a Tonka toy, because they did a floor a week. I mean, in actuality, they were almost doing a floor a day, because they would do, they rough things out, right, with the plumbing and the electric pipes, and then they put the rebar in, and then they built the forms, and then they poured the concrete. And they would go from a flat floor, and that thing where the airplane hits it, and they had the fire, and they said, "Oh, this all melted, that's why the build done." Well, that was called the deck. And that, you ever go into a big box store and you look at the steel work there, and they have this corrugated ceiling stuff, right? So they put up, not even I-beams, they put up these things that are made out of rebar, T-bar, pieces of steel with rebar bent like that and welded, and that's like I-beam. So in the World Trade Center, before they would build a floor, they would put a deck down, right? Of that same kind of steel that you see in a big box store, they would put there, and you would work on that, when you were putting in the rebar and the steel and the pipes and the electric and all of that. And then they build a form, and then they pour the concrete, right? And we would do a floor a week, right? Less than that, pretty much. We'd almost do 2 floors a week. But it would be 3 pours. The floor that you worked on, the bottom, they'd be putting up the bird cage on the net for the next 2 floors while we were pouring that floor, right? While things were still open. So it was like a choreographed circus, right? Anyway, they invented much technology. So I don't know if anybody out there knows about plumbing, but there's a thing called no-hub, because back in the day they used to take cast iron pipes and put them together with lead oakum, and that would take forever. And no-hub is where you have a rubber gasket with a clamp around it, and they had this tool that cut the pipe like ping, So instead of taking 6 hours to do 2 feet of cast iron pipe, they could do a whole floor, right? And now everything's being done in PVC, even in skyscrapers. They have heavy duty PVC. Anyway, so they invented a lot of technology to build that building. And Greenlee made a pipe bender, because pretty much every floor would have a zillion pieces of conduit, all galvanized, really heavy stuff, right? And most of the feeders were like 4 and 6 inches, right? So even back in 1969, a 6-inch piece of galvanized electric pipe cost about $100. And it's really tough to bend that shit. So you need pneumatic benders. You can't use a hickey, like a pipe bender, right? So we'd have this pneumatic, and they're called shoes. And that was, it was basically a hickey with a pneumatic driver on it instead of you using your arm. Anyway, so, if you're doing 1 or 2 pieces a day, you can do it with that. But it's really easy to screw up a bend, especially if you're doing more than 90. And see, a lot of these pipes would have a 90 and a few hickeys and an offset. So that's like 6 bends in a 10-foot pipe, and not all going the same way. So you had to be able to do that, and to do it with a pneumatic shoe, not very easily. And you couldn't. So let's say you were going to have 20 pipes all going from like a distribution panel to, let's say, a service panel. You'd have 6 pipes doing that. They'd be right next to each other. So they'd all have to kind of be bent exactly the same way, so they would look good, right? Because you were going to put them on a piece of Kindendorf, and that's a H piece of metal that you lag onto a concrete wall. And then you put the pipes there, and they have these straps that fit into the Kindorf. It's a lot better and easier and safer and quicker to use Kindorf than, let's say, a strap, right? So anyway, the guys who invented all of the electrical tools, Greenlee, basically made this really interesting. It was a table, right? And you put your 10-foot piece of pipe on it. It had these little nubs that you could move up and down the table, right? And then there were these little dials that you would set below, right? And it was all math, and it was all visualization. So if you could visualize inside out, and I got dyslexia, so I see inside out. So you put it up there, and they had this big book on how to do it, and you put all these marks on it, and that's where you adjust the little nubs, and then you'd figure out where what to set the little dials on, and then you hit the button, and the thing about that is if you needed like 40 pieces of pipe, all bent the same way. Once you figured to do one, you just kept putting the next piece of pipe, the next piece of pipe, and just hitting that button, and you'd have like as many 10-foot pieces all bent the same way, right? So they were trying to get all different guys to do it, and nobody could think inside out, and no one could do math, right? And I could do it in my head, right? So that's how I became a master, because to do that job, you had to be a master, right? So I went from apprentice to, the next guy, and then to a master, And so all in less than 4 or 5 months, right? And then when I came back, so then, when October rolled around, I went off to high school, went back to prep school. And then when May came back, I came back and they're still building. So I went back to the basement, bending pipe. And before I left, they gave me 20 guys, right? And I went, taught them all how to do it, and 3 could do it out of the 20, who were pretty smart guys, who were like, straight up, not, oh, look at me, I'm really great. They were like, they wanted to learn how to do this. Only 3 did it, right? So, and they quite didn't do it as, they had to slow themselves way down, because if you screwed up one piece of pipe, that's $100. And let's say you got it wrong, and you bent 10 of those pipes to take it up on the 74th floor, and you got it wrong, and you did all 7 wrong. That's $700 right there. So anyway, in the 3 summers that I worked on that, I never screwed one. I mean, I'd screw one up, but I wouldn't send it up on the floor, so they'd try to put it in, then it wouldn't work, and if it wasn't, I never let it out of my little basement, cell. And so I was making pretty good money there, because I got bonuses and all kinds and I got to be a steward. At 19, I was a steward, and that's dealing with, union stuff and complaints and mobsters and all of that kind of stuff. And that's where I met Tony Two Toes. And he started having me do stuff on the side, which is fine. All the people in Grandpa's Soul said, that's no problem. All the other people in the hierarchy, not a problem. Good. You're doing. You're following the right footsteps, right? And anyway, so that was like my reality of those. I went to prep school with the richest people on the planet, and some that weren't even from the planet. And then I worked in the union scene on the World Trade Center. So it was quite an interesting dichotomy, and it gave me a worldview and there were a lot of people who were coming back from Vietnam, showing up there, and I would work with them, as a steward. I would work with those guys, because I was trying to do through the union. The IBEW was a really one of the last social unions, meaning, it was, came up and became a real thing during the Depression in the 20s. And so they had, the Union Hall was somewhere on 8th Avenue. It was it almost looked like, an art museum. It almost looked like the Whitney. It almost looked like the Ice Cream Cone Art Museum on 5th Avenue, the one where you take an elevator all the way to the top, and you kind of go down, you walk down this thing, and all the, anyway. I worked at all those things. So they had, IBEW had its own hospital, its own medical stuff. And it didn't just do it for the workers, did it for the families and also other people in the community, right? It was a very community thing. So they had a thing called the Girls Vacation Fund, and the Boys Athletic League. And I got really involved in that. And there was a priest who was an amazing guy. I forget his name, and I forget the nonprofit he had, but he was like a saint. And yeah, he was gay, but so he was gay. It was like being, male. He didn't go after little boys. He didn't have relationships. He had communal relationships, sex wasn't a thing for him, right? And he had the agape love, the God of love. Just because he was homosexual, he was born homosexual, but he didn't have to be that because all of those emotional things of being a human being, he was a priest and he was in service to God's. This is really where I learned about God's unconditional love and God's co-creation was this guy, because he was as gay as you could get, but he did not service, he did not go, that way. So he ran all this stuff for the IBEW and other organizations too. I mean, that's how I met Kaufman of the, a big cathedral up there near Columbia. Bishop Kaufman was there, and that's how I met, I work at NYPIRG for Fred Flintstone of the environmental section, Mr. Nader. Anyway, I was one of Nader's raiders. So that all came through Local 3, right? And so I was doing all of that because I wanted to get a really good rep on showing that I was a community guy. So when my draft board wanted to throw me into Vietnam, I said, no, I'm a conscious objector. Look at all the stuff I'm doing. Let me keep doing this. And, so I was working at the, and everything social, and nobody as we were heading into the, latter 60s and early 70s, none of those guys, the union didn't really care about being a social, responsible entity, but they realized politically it was really good for them to do. So for a guy like me, pop in, I mean, that was another reason I became a steward, because I did all this other stuff. And they said, good, he can do that. None of us want to do that. So he'll go do that. And Grandpa Stahl thought that was great because he was part and parcel of making sure Local 3 was that, because he started Local 3. So anyway, so I was very intimate with the World Trade Center, knew it really well, right? And I got to know the union life really well. And the other thing about being a steward, so we're working on the World Trade Center and other big buildings and other projects with loads of other unions, right? And other unions were more mobbed up. Local 3, the IBEW in New York, was like God. It's like, being on Olympus, and there were mobsters down low, but on top, we were like the cream of the crop because no one screws around with electricity. Plumbers, carpenters, framers, steel workers, pipe fitters. That's kind of crass trades compared to what we did, right? And as the technology got more it got stranger. But the union, we had our mobsters, and they would control the job site by allowing or not allowing trades to have electricity. And I thought that was stupid, right? And so there'd be some moron guy who was an apprentice, but he was a mobster. I mean, he was put there. And or a mobster's son or nephew, and he would do stupid shit. Like he would, a carpenter would come with his skill saw, and he's building frames for the concrete, and that's not like fine carpentry. So they, and they didn't have battery tools at those times, and so there'd be extension cords all over the place, and these morons would come and clip the extension cords, right, and just to say, you have to pay us. If you want electricity, you got to pay us. And that was an IBEW. That was these mobsters. And I remember this one mobster was standing in a puddle of water, and he, not even insulated clippers, just, and he got, and everyone, I mean, even the electricians didn't like this guy. And he had cut a high voltage line. Because he had no idea about, because see, if you had the plug all the way down on the ground floor, the worksite would look like a spider's web. So we had high voltage to every 10 volts, and we'd have transformer, and we would distribute the temporary power out, and lighting out into the hinterlands, right? And that's what and that's another thing I was kind of in charge of. So that's why I got pretty good at doing taking buildings apart. Doing whenever you rehab a building, I'm really good at going in, looking at the service, the distribution, figuring out where it goes, looking at the sub panels, and keeping all of that and disconnecting everything else and putting up temp power and lighting. And, I could do that all day long. And so, but you got to be able to see things and sense things, right? Because it's real easy, especially in a poor concrete building, to miss something because you don't see, here's a panel and you don't see where all those pipes are going. Anyway, so I was really good at that. So that was another little thing I did because I didn't bend pipes. I mean, I had a list and I could get ahead of where they were going. And pretty much by the time I had worked on it a month, I realized that this whole building every floor is the same. So I don't have to change. They'd send me these sheets of all these cut lists of this, that, and the other thing. And they were all basically, there were 20 different types of bends, of where a 6-inch or a 4-inch or a 2-inch that you would do on this table would be. So I just knock them out and make a pile of this stuff, right? So I could go and do other stuff. I didn't have to stay down in the basement, forever. I would just do it. And when I was down there, I got paid pretty good. I mean, I got paid more than the average guy just walking around doing stuff, right? I got paid a lot more, right? But when I went and took care of problems, I got paid way even more. So when I was 22, right, I was not only in Local 3, I was Naboth IATSE. I mean, I was in the filmmaker's electricians, not a grip, but a filmmaker electrician, meaning a best boy. And in theater, I was, not just a stagehand. I was the ME, master electrician on the job, right? And both those got paid. You got paid up to kazoo on Broadway. Your ME, you were making close to $3,000 a week. And that's like in the 60s and early 70s, right? And when I worked on films, I worked on a number of films, TV shows, and I got paid all three ways because IATSE and Naboth didn't, they had different parts. Even, guys on stage work, there weren't any film people, and unless they're shooting a film on a stage. But there would be stage guys who would be on films, right? So, and they would need a IBE die if they were going to take current off of a meter, right? Off of the utility, right? And and then there was another type of electrician that went to the Naboth guys that did generator sets, because you could do a TV show and you're on the street, depending on what kind of lighting it's going to be, right? And so I had gone to school to be a lighting designer. I worked for Lester Polakov. He was like, the Moses of scenic and film lighting design. So anyway, I had quite the pedigree. So when I was 20 years old, and I was, 22, let's say, when I come back from my stint out there in the West, and I had, gone and worked at, my stint, my draft board caught up to me, and when I went down there to turn myself in, they said, well, we don't trust you with a gun. We're going to make you we see your pedigree, you've done all this social stuff, we're going to make you do alternative service. So I went and worked at Fort Hamilton, right? And that's where I learned to be a healer. And also learned about, medical electrical work, another little checklist on my electric career. So anyway, there was a period I remember the first time I made some serious bucks when I was 20, right? Because I was working for 3 different unions. I was working on movies and building skyscrapers at the same time, and it was no big deal, right? And I remember being on a set of a Woody Allen film. I think it was Manhattan. And it's not like I got the jacket, right? Because I wasn't there all the time, right? There were 4 other guys like me, right? And I was just because I was making $60 an hour. And if I was, and when you do a shoot, you don't just work 8 hours. You can be there for 16 hours. So anything over 8 hours, I made $100, and anything over 12 hours, I made $300. So sometimes when I worked on films, I would be making $1,200 an hour. And I was like 20. And really, it was no big deal. Once you set everything on, turned it all on, you were just to make sure that no one died and the place didn't blow up. Because it wasn't like you were a grip, you weren't setting instruments, you weren't doing anything. You're just making sure the power was good and steady, it's at the right frequency, because it could screw up the film camera if the current wasn't clean. That's what they call it. There's clean power and dirty power. Anyways, and dirty power is stuff that has bad ground and there's a lot of buzz on it, and the frequency is doing this, going up and down. And the power in your house is normally screwed because it's dirty power, right? Anyway, so my job was to make sure everything was hunky-dory. But once I got it running and set, I didn't have, I hung out at the food truck, right? Or wherever the pretty, the girls who did, makeup and costumes, So anyway, I spent one summer doing that, and I made a ridiculous amount of money, and I didn't do anything. It wasn't like working on the World Trade Center. It wasn't like working for Grandpa Stall. It wasn't like doing any stuff. I just sat around and read books, and flirted with the girls and ate, right? And I remember this one guy. And he was like the Hulk, but not in a muscular way, just big way, right? And so we were talking, and he was, I was reading Sid Arthur. And he said, "Oh, I read that book." I said, "You read that book?" And then "Did you read this book?" And it was Thomas Merton's, Magic Mountain. "Oh, yeah, I read that book." I said, "Really?" He said, "Oh, yeah." He said, I actually went to Columbia, the union put me through college, right? And I studied philosophy. I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And then, I was thinking of being a college professor, and, I was going to make, $4,000 a year. And that year I made $180,000 just being a journeyman electrician. I worked on a nuclear power plant. I worked on Indian Point. And I said, "Really?" And I just kept saying, "Really?" Right? So this guy was kind of as close to my path of life as anybody. He said, "Yeah, I got a couple businesses. I got a nice house upstate. I got a house out in, Shelter Island. I got a house, in Staten Island. I got a house in Queens." And really? He said, "Yeah." And I got a couple buildings on 8th Avenue. And, this guy's following the trajectory that I was headed on, right? But he weighed like 900 pounds, and he already had like 5 heart attacks and, open heart surgery, and he was getting, dialysis. And I looked at him and I said to myself, my God. And he was only like 45, 48. And I said, man, it's going to be me. It was, and I changed a lot of things. It all still kind of ended up like that, a little different because nobody's the same. And, but I didn't, I thought it changed enough stuff. Like I didn't, stick at the union. I didn't stick at the movie jobs. I didn't stick at the TV jobs. I didn't do any of that. And I gave myself another thing. Well, I'm going to do lots of different things because if I'm always changing up this, whatever I'm doing, I won't get stuck. Well, I got stuck in changing things up so I wouldn't get stuck. It's one of the curses of being a human being is we get stuck in everything we do, right? And you look at the world outside, that's, why are we having all these wars? We're stuck in having all these wars. So I've been here at my friend's house now for 2 nights. I'll probably sleep here one more night, and then I'll probably help him do a bunch of stuff tomorrow, and I might even sleep over tomorrow, but that'll be it. Sunday we'll go to church, and then I'll go back to the hopefully the weather will change. It's right now cold, dank. I was, the last 2 weeks the weather has been this kind of ick. And the ick was in me because where the deep green is, it's like I said, spring, summer, fall, it's great. That dankiness that I have in the man cave, and that's why it's a cave, friggin'. So I sleep, and when I wake up, I'm and my nose is all stuffed up, and I have a kind of compromised sinus, lungs, esophagus, so staying in his really dry, warm house, everything's dried up, right? And so, that's why, everyone around here gets COVID and flu and this and that, and I don't, and because I'm out in the woods, I don't really see a lot of people. And I thought, oh, okay, I can stay here a day or two where it's warm. I can take showers and watch TV, and he's got a full refrigerator full of food. And he's always, eat what you want, do whatever the heck you want. And so, and his family, I fit into their family. It's not like, oh, he's a bother. He's a sponge. He's a this. He's a that. No, because I'm not here that much. And when I am, everyone kind of enjoys my company, and then I'm gone for like a month or two. I mean, they know I'm just like over there, and they can come visit me. And on Sundays, I will, be at church, and we can talk, and they'll take me out to lunch or breakfast, or I'll go to their place for that. Anyway, everything works very nice. So I've been watching a lot of TV, been able to talk to you on the old internet. I didn't bring my charger, so I don't, I have to do this because their charger fits this. So anyway, but what I'm really seeing is this whole political thing. There is no difference between Biden and Carrot Head, and if you look at what they've done, or what they say, or they do, the same thing. It's really. It's all scripted. They're not making any decisions. The higher ups, the guys on the high table, right? So it's pretty clear. We have all these wars. I mean, look what's going on in Israel. Does that make any sense? No. What's going on in Ukraine? Does that make any sense? No. You see what's in Africa? They got more resources than anybody, and they're all starving. They have about 20 wars. I mean, in Sierra Leone, there are more people dying than in the Strip, right? Now, the thing about the Strip, more people are dying quickly, right? And I have a sense that at a certain point in the next couple of weeks, they're already shooting. Did you see that video yesterday of, 2 trucks make it up north, right? And it was either a drone or a satellite picture of that whole valley. And all these little black dots, they look like fleas, and they were all over the place. And as soon as the trucks came in, they went onto that. And then you saw surrounding on the edges of that valley where the Israeli tanks had just kind of rolled in another mile and just started shooting up everybody, right? And, and the tanks were good, 2 miles away from any of those, because those people going after food, not after the Israelis. And they, killed, I don't know how many people, when I saw it last on the news, they killed about 130. and severely wounded about 800, and wounded, or you know, about a couple thousand others. Cuts, braces, coughing from the poison gases sprayed on them and stuff. And so it's obvious that's what's going to happen in Rafah, right? There's 1 point something million people there. That's what's going to happen there. And so that's just going to be unfrigging unbelievable. And then those people are going to be like, they're going to like say, well, we're all going to be dead, so screw it. And so they're going to just, pick up a stone and go after the IDF. We had to protect ourselves. Best way to, me, how to protect myself? I'm not in harm's way. I'm not there. I'm not in front of it. And the Jewish guys who are in the IDF, who are on the ground there, they are not professional soldiers. They are guys who, since high school have been going to, IDF's summer camp. And they're you talk about raping and killing and eating babies. That's it. Right now, I'm not being anti-Semitic at this moment, because those guys who are doing that at the time that they're doing it, they're not Jewish people. They are in a psychotic state to be able to do that kind of. Those people have no weapons. They're not a threat, and they're taking F-16s, F-15s, and tanks and going after them. Right, so they're going to go after them because they want that property. And the guys who are in the Zionist neo-insane clown party, Bibi's neo-insane clown party, they don't represent what Israel is. They don't represent, what Moses was. They're not representing the Abraham relationship to God's unconditional love, right? So, and a good 20% of the people who are in the Strip, the Palestinians who are there, are Christians. When I tell my Christian friends, the money you send to foreign lands for your church, right? Well, about, a good chunk of your change has gone to build 2 of the hospitals that are in, the Strip. And one of the ministers said, that's impossible. And the lady who's in charge of the, the books, I said, no, he's right. And, so that's what I'm saying. Nothing makes sense. But when you look at it, it's all scripted. So an entity that's not even representative of any political party, the political parties in the United States, they don't represent the citizen. They don't represent us. They don't even represent anything within the tradition that we call democracy. They represent themselves. All the politicians themselves. They get paid off. I'm sure they all have dirt on them. They've all been on the Lolita Express. And, so that's what we're seeing. And if you look at history, when Rome fell, when Babylon fell, and you look at Israel fell 8. You read your Old Testament, it fell at least 8 times. And the big 2 times was when the Babylonians went in and took it, and when the Egyptians took it. And the Israelites, and this is one of the problems, not problems, but why did, after Moses took the Hebrews, see, they weren't even Israel. Before they left Egypt, they were just the Hebrew tribes, right? They weren't Israel, right? And even though God talked about Israel, it was like in the future, or God was like using the term Israel as his girlfriend. I mean, he wanted to have a personal relationship, right? And every time, and what's fornication? It was when Israel was screwing off, right? Doing stuff. What is sin? The only real sin, you look at the 10 Commandments, they all revolve around breaking the pact that God has with humanity, with Adam and Eve, right? And, God made everything, knows everything. So when he made Adam and Eve in his own image and likeness, he knew its bad traits. He knew that these monkeys here were going to have those bad traits, but they weren't bad traits. They just were traits that had to be experienced so you could, with your free will, choose. The comic strip of Donald Duck, the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, right? You're constantly having to, they're both talking to you. It's the story of Job, Anyway, so that's where we're at right now. And we've been doing this thing for 1 hour and 9 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let's see. And it's, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to take a shower. That's another shower. It's, the nice thing is just to stand in that stream of nice hot water. Ooh, it's nice. Another shower. I'm off to another shower. I'm going to make another cup of coffee. I'm going to stick, how much juice do I have left here? Not too bad. I'll stick it back on the charger. So you might see me in another hour, but might watch some more TV, some more Perry Mason. Anyway, so I wish you guys would have made some more comments. And remember, I want to thank you, all you guys who, all 3 of you have sent something in to my PayPal. It's still working. So please, if you want to, throw something in there. Send me some comments on, when you look at this thing and it says, oh, you want to comment? Throw some comments on there. Like it, subscribe, do all that stuff. Let's get tell your friends about it. I mean, I do this as a shamanic ceremony, right? I drop it into the pond of the World Wide Web. And, it has its effect, so somewhere about, 50 or 60 people watch this for each show. One thing that's interesting. So when I click off here, it will show how many people have watched it, how much time they've watched it, how many likes they have, all the above, right? And then I'll come back the next day and look at it. And often it will say less people who had watched it than it told me when I was shutting it down. Anyway, it's obvious that I am being, kept down on the farm, which is fine. Farm is fine for me. Because when God wants me to be a notoriety or whatever God wants me to be, I don't have to be an A-list because I'm already infamous, right? Been there, done that, right? So I'm here to serve God's love in co-creation, period, right? By being with as many as you as I can be, to give you insight and make you feel happy to be God's slave, right? And that's what we need to be, God's slave. People don't want to hear that, so I'll use the word griot, which is the Greek word for slave. So that's, if you've ever heard that term griot, you hear it in connection with a midwife, right? A midwife comes with a griot, a person who's assisting the delivery of the child. And what's a griot do? Everything else, right? And does everything, makes the food, cleans the shit, all the above, right? And let's have some more thumbs up, and let's have some more comments. And when I come back on a little later, after I charge this little sucker up a little bit, you guys can, make some comments during the show. Okay, so I'm going to go and make a little something, a little cup of coffee, take another shower. Can't have, when you don't have any showers and you get to do one, you might as well have a few. Okay, I'll talk to you later.